In 476 AD, Rome fell. The greatest empire in human history collapsed, seemingly forever. But history didn't end there. To the east, on the shores of the Bosphorus, another city had already stood for over 1,000 years. Constantinople, the city of Constantine, the new Rome. A city that survived barbarians, Arabs, Crusaders, and Ottomans. A city that kept the flame of Roman civilization alive while the West drowned in darkness and chaos. The empire we now call Byzantium stood for another 1,000 years after Rome's fall. 1,000 years! It survived dozens of wars, countless sieges, endless conspiracies. And yet, it too would fall. Today we'll open another box from history. We'll discover how Byzantium survived when the whole world wanted it destroyed, and why its fall marked the end of an entire era. To understand Byzantium, we must go back. In 330 AD, as Rome was already cracking at the seams, Emperor Constantine the Great made a decision that would change the course of history. He moved the empire's capital to the east, to a small Greek city called Byzantium, and renamed it Constantinople, the city of Constantine. This wasn't just moving a capital, it was a symbolic act. Rome, old Rome with its pagan traditions, decaying aristocracy, and constant conspiracies, was losing its status as the center of the world. The center shifted eastward, where the economy was stronger, where trade routes converged, where defense against barbarians was more reliable. Constantinople had an ideal location. The city stood on a narrow peninsula surrounded by water on 3 sides. On the land side, it was protected by massive walls, the Theodosian walls, considered impregnable for 1,000 years. And from the sea, massive chains blocked the entrance to the Golden Horn. The new capital grew at incredible speed. By the 5th century, Constantinople had become the largest city in Europe, with a population of 500,000. For comparison, at that time, Paris had about 30,000 inhabitants. London had 20,000. Constantinople was 15 to 20 times larger than any Western European city. It had aqueducts, sewage systems, a university, a gigantic hippodrome seating 100,000 spectators, larger than Rome's Colosseum. And its harbor teemed with trading ships from across the world, from China, India, Persia, Africa, Scandinavia. Rome had died, but its soul had migrated to Constantinople. The 6th century became Byzantium's golden age. Emperor Justinian I, the last ruler to speak Latin, dreamed of restoring the Roman Empire to its former borders. And he almost succeeded. His generals, Belisarius and Narses, reconquered North Africa, Italy, and part of Spain from the barbarians. For a brief moment, the Roman Empire once again stretched from Gibraltar to the Euphrates. But Justinian's greatest legacy wasn't war. It was law. The Code of Justinian, a collection of Roman law, systematized and cleared of contradictions, became the foundation of legal systems in most European countries. Modern jurisprudence in France, Germany, Italy, Spain, and most of Latin America stands on it. And then there was the church. The Cathedral of Hagia Sophia, Holy Wisdom. Built in just 5 years, in 537, it became the greatest structure of its time. When Justinian first entered the completed cathedral, he exclaimed, "Solomon, I have surpassed thee." And he was right. Hagia Sophia's dome, 31 meters in diameter, seemed to float in air, supported by 4 gigantic pillars and 40 windows, so that light created the illusion that the dome was suspended from heaven by golden chains. This church remained the greatest Christian cathedral for nearly 1,000 years, until 1453, when it was converted into a mosque. It still stands today, nearly 15 centuries later. How did Byzantium survive when the whole world wanted it destroyed? The answer: technology. And the empire's greatest technological advantage was a secret weapon: Greek fire. This was a liquid incendiary mixture that the Byzantines projected through bronze siphons onto enemy ships. The most remarkable thing, Greek fire burned even on water. More than that, water actually intensified it. The exact composition of Greek fire remains unknown to this day. The Byzantines guarded the recipe as the greatest state secret. We know only the basic components: petroleum, quicklime, sulfur, saltpeter. Perhaps the secret ingredient has been lost forever. Greek fire saved Constantinople at least twice. In 674 to 678, when an Arab fleet of 1,500 ships besieged the city, it was Greek fire that destroyed the Muslim fleet. The Arabs lost hundreds of ships and were forced to retreat. Had Constantinople fallen then, Islam might have spread across all of Europe as early as the 7th century. A second time, in 717 to 718, when a new Arab fleet again approached the city. And again, Greek fire decided the fate of the siege. These two victories stopped the Arab invasion of Europe for nearly 700 years. Many historians believe that Greek fire saved European civilization. Without it, the history of humanity would look completely different. This was the nuclear weapon of the Middle Ages, absolute technological superiority that decided the fate of a continent. But Byzantium wasn't just an empire of swords. It was an empire of faith. And faith would eventually split it from the rest of the Christian world. The Byzantines considered themselves the true keepers of Christianity. They spoke Greek, served liturgy in the Eastern Rite, and recognized the authority of the Patriarch of Constantinople. Meanwhile, in the West, in the former Roman provinces, the Church spoke Latin and submitted to the Pope in Rome. The differences weren't only linguistic. The Byzantines venerated icons, sacred images of Christ and the saints, as windows into the divine world. Some in the West considered this idolatry. Disputes over icons, iconoclasm, tore the empire apart for over a century in the 8th and 9th centuries. But the great rupture came with the Great Schism of 1054. A papal legate placed a bull of excommunication against the Patriarch of Constantinople on the altar of Hagia Sophia. The Patriarch, in turn, excommunicated the papal legate. Thus, the Christian Church split into Catholic and Orthodox. This schism wasn't just a church dispute. It determined the fate of entire civilizations. Orthodox Byzantium influenced the culture of Russia, Ukraine, Serbia, Bulgaria, and Greece. The Catholic West shaped France, Germany, Spain, and Italy. Two branches of one Christian civilization, which still differ in culture, art, and even thought. And this schism, as we'll soon see, played a fatal role in Byzantium's own fate. In 1204, an event occurred that Byzantium never truly recovered from. The Fourth Crusade, an expedition meant to liberate Jerusalem from the Muslims, ended very differently. The Crusaders, mostly Franks and Venetians, instead of sailing to the Holy Land, attacked Christian Constantinople. The formal pretext was intervention in Byzantine dynastic disputes, but the real reasons were money and envy. On April 13, 1204, the Crusaders stormed into the city. What happened next was described by eyewitnesses with horror. For 3 days they plundered the greatest city in the Christian world. They ransacked churches, desecrated relics, raped nuns, killed priests at the altars. From the imperial palace they carted away tons of gold, precious stones, works of art. From Hagia Sophia, they tore down the silver altar studded with gems and divided it among themselves. The 4 bronze horses standing above the hippodrome entrance, the Venetians took them to Venice, where they still stand today on the facade of St. Mark's Basilica. The Crusaders created a Latin empire on Byzantium's ruins, and the Pope himself, who should have been protecting Christians, approved this plunder. The Byzantines reclaimed Constantinople in 1261, after 57 years. But the empire was already a shadow of its former self. It would never again regain its power, wealth, or influence. The wound was fatal. And astonishingly, this wound Byzantium received not from enemies, but from brothers in faith. By the 15th century, all that remained of the once great empire was the city of Constantinople and its surroundings, and even that lay in ruins. The population had shrunk from 500,000 to just 40,000. Vast quarters stood empty. Emperors no longer called themselves emperors of the Romans, only emperors of the Greeks. But the city still stood, and the Theodosian walls were still considered impregnable. Until 1453. On April 2, 1453, Sultan Mehmed II approached the city with an army of 80,000 and a fleet of 126 ships. The Byzantine Emperor Constantine XI Palaiologos had fewer than 7,000 defenders. Mehmed brought with him a gigantic cannon, a bombard capable of firing stone balls weighing half a ton. These balls broke through walls that had held for 1,000 years. The siege lasted 53 days. The Byzantines repelled assault after assault. They used Greek fire, fought on the walls, on barricades, in the alleys. But there were too few of them. On May 29, 1453, the final assault began. The Genoese commander, Giovanni Justiniani, who led the defense, was wounded and left the walls. Panic spread among the defenders. Emperor Constantine XI, according to legend, cast off his imperial insignia with the words, "The city falls, and I shall perish with it," and charged into battle. He was never seen again. By evening, the city was taken. Mehmed entered Hagia Sophia and converted it into a mosque. The 1,000-year history of the Roman Empire, first in Rome, then in Constantinople, had ended. Byzantium fell. But did it disappear? Its legacy surrounds us everywhere. Orthodox churches with golden domes, from Moscow to Mount Athos, are the direct heritage of Hagia Sophia. The Russian alphabet, Cyrillic, was created by Byzantine missionaries Cyril and Methodius in the 9th century. The Russian word for Tsar is a corrupted Caesar. Russian czars considered Moscow the third Rome, heir to both Rome and Constantinople. Byzantine scholars who fled to Italy after the fall of Constantinople brought with them ancient Greek manuscripts that had been forgotten in the West. These texts, Plato, Aristotle, Homer, became fuel for the Italian Renaissance. Without the fall of Byzantium, there would have been no Renaissance. Byzantine law formed the basis of legal codes in most European countries. Byzantine art influenced all of European icon painting. Byzantine diplomacy became a model for all subsequent empires. The very word diplomacy in many languages is connected to Byzantine practices. But Byzantium's greatest legacy is a lesson that civilizations can live for millennia if they have strength of spirit, faith in their values, and a willingness to defend them. Byzantium survived as long as it believed in itself. It fell when it lost unity, when crusaders, brothers in faith, betrayed it. Today, Hagia Sophia stands in Istanbul, a city that still bears Constantine's name in its memory. Its dome still floats in the air. Its mosaics still gleam with gold. The empire died, but its light has not been extinguished. Subscribe to the Box of Ages. There are still many boxes of stories waiting to be opened.